Listen to this episode and more on Spotify. Hey, it's something that is taught to children. Children don't just wake up one day and choose to be evil. So when children make the news for terrible things, it's always a thought of how they got to be where they are now. Standing in front of a judge for theft, bullying, or even murder. That's what the town of Scottswood area experienced in 1968 when 2 bodies of kids were found dead. As the investigation started going, the kids' dead bodies being found would not be the most shocking thing they learned, but finding out that the killer was only 11 years old. Hello everyone, my name is Juby Scott, and today we are going to be talking about when children being raised in a broken home goes simply too far. It's bad enough when children are sadly found murdered, but what do you do when the killer is also a child? Sit back, relax, and let's dive in. This is Juby After Dark. Mary Bell was born on May 26, 1957. Born to Elizabeth Bell, who was a well-known prostitute in the area. Almost always absent from the home, traveling to Glasgow to work and just leaving her children with her father or alone if he wasn't around. Betty was only 17 when she had Mary, who was her second child. Mary's actual father is unknown to this day. Mary did believe the father figure William Bell was her father for most of her life. He was a violent alcoholic and a criminal with an arrest record. Mary was an unwanted child. As soon as the nurses tried to place Mary on Betty, she yelled, "Take that thing away from me." During her childhood years, Mary often was found neglected in her house, always having injuries from household accidents. It was founded that in 1960, Betty was discovered trying to feed Mary sleeping pills, hoping it would kill her. Even dropping Mary from a 1-story window hoping gravity would take care of her. Mary was even sold to a mentally unstable woman who was unable to have children of her own. Mary's older sister, Catherine, traveled to Newcastle to reclaim Mary and bring her back to her mother's. Mary's other family members have offered to take custody of Mary to get her out of there, but Betty would refuse the help. Who, in the 1960s, started to do sadomasochist sessions with her clients, where Mary would be allegedly blindfolded and forced to be a part of these sessions. Both at home and school, Mary exhibited numerous signs of disturbed and unpredictable behavior, including sudden mood swings and chronic bedwetting. She is known to have frequently fought with other children, both boys and girls, and to have attempted to strangle or suffocate her classmates or playmates on several occasions. On one occasion, she is known to have attempted to block the trachea of a young girl with sand. This violent behavior made many children reluctant to socialize with Mary, who would frequently spend her free time with Norma Joyce Bell, the 13-year-old daughter of a next-door neighbor, with whom she had become great friends with in early 1967. Although the girls shared the same surname, they were not related. According to one classmate, she and her peers had become accustomed to the sudden and marked changes in Mary's behavior. And when she began exhibiting distressful mannerisms, including shaking her head and forming a steely gaze, her peers instinctively knew she was about to become violent, with the focus of her stare being the individual she would attack. On Saturday, May 11, 1968, a 3-year-old boy was discovered wandering, dazed and bleeding in the vicinity of St. Margaret's Road, Scottswood. The child later informed police he had been playing with Mary Bell and Norma Bell atop a disused air raid shelter, where he had been pushed 7 feet from the roof to the ground, inflicting a severe laceration to his head. He was unsure of which one of the girls had actually pushed him. The same evening, the parents of 3 small girls contacted police to complain that both Mary and Norma had attempted to strangle their children as they played in the sandpit. That evening, both girls were interviewed about these incidents. Both girls denied any capability for the air raid shelter incident, claiming they had simply discovered the boy, bleeding heavily from a head wound, after he had fallen. Further questioned about the attempted strangulation of the 3 young girls, Mary denied any knowledge of the incident. However, Norma admitted Mary had tried to throttle each of the girls, stating, "Mary went to one of the girls and said, 'What happens if you choke someone? Do they die?' Then Mary put both hands round the girl's throat and squeezed. The girl started to go purple. I told Mary to stop, but she wouldn't. Then she put her hands around Pauline's throat and she started going purple as well. Another girl, Susan Cornish, came up and Mary did the same thing to her." Police notified the local authority of the incidents and of Mary's violent nature, but due to her age, both girls were simply given a warning. No further action was taken. On the 25th of May, 1968, the day before her 11th birthday, Belle strangled 4-year-old Martin Brown in an upstairs bedroom of a derelict house located at 85 Street, Margaret's Road. She is believed to have committed this crime alone. Brown's body was discovered by 3 children at approximately 3:30 p.m. He was lying on his back with his arms stretched above his head. Aside from specks of blood and foam around his mouth, no signs of violence were visible upon his body. A local workman named John Hall soon arrived on the scene. He attempted to perform CPR to no avail. The following day, Bernard Knight conducted a post-mortem upon the body of Martin Brown. Knight was unable to find any signs of violence on the child's body, and thus was unable to determine the child's cause of death. Although he was able to discount the investigator's theory, the child had died from poisoning through ingesting tablets. The following day, May 27th, staffs of a local store discovered a break-in and vandalism of their building and immediately notified the police, who also discovered 4 separate notes that claimed responsibility for Martin Brown's murder. One of the notes said, "I murder so that I may come back." And another one read, "We did murder Martin Brown. Fuck off, you bastard." The police dismissed this incident as a tasteless and childish prank. 2 days later, on the 29th of May, shortly before the funeral of Martin Brown, in a game of chicken, both girls called upon the house of his mother, June, asking to see her son. When June Brown replied that they could not see her son because he was dead, Mary replied, "Oh, I know he's dead. I want to see him in his coffin." On the afternoon of July 31st, 1968, a 3-year-old named Brian Howe was last seen by his parents in the street outside his house playing with one of his siblings, the family dog, and Mary Bell and Norma Bell. When he did not return home later that afternoon, concerned relatives and neighbors searched the streets without success. At 11:10 p.m., a search party discovered Brian's body between 2 large concrete blocks. The first policeman to arrive at the scene observed that a deliberate but feeble attempt has been made to conceal the body, which was covered in clumps of grass and weeds. Brian's skin started to turn bluish dark purple upon the child's lips, and several bruises and scratches were evident upon his neck. A pair of broken scissors lay close to his feet. The coroner would conclude that Brian had died of strangulation, and that he had been deceased for up to 7.5 hours before the discovery of his body. The killer had evidently squeezed Brian's nostrils closed with one hand as he or she gripped his throat with the other. Numerous puncture wounds had been inflicted to the child's legs before death. Sections of his hair had been cut from his head, his genitals had been partially mutilated, and a crude attempt has been made to carve the initial M into his stomach. The relatively small amount of force used to murder the child led the coroner to conclude the killer was another child. The discovery of Brian Howe's body sparked a large-scale manhunt. Over 100 detectives from across Scottsdale were assigned to the investigation, and more than 1,200 children had been questioned with regards to their whereabouts on August 2nd. 2 children questioned by detectives on August 1st were Mary and Norma Bell, who, witnesses informed investigators, had been seen playing with Brian shortly before he was believed to have died. In her initial interview, Norma seemed excitable, whereas Mary was markedly more obedient. Although both girls were evasive and contradictory in their initial statements, they freely admitted to having played with Brian on the date of his death, but denied seeing him after lunchtime. Questioned further the following day, Mary stated she remembered seeing an 8-year-old local boy playing with Brian on the afternoon of July 31st, and that she had also seen him hitting the child. Furthermore, she stated she also remembered that the boy had been covered in grass and weeds, as if he had been rolling in the field, and that he had in his possession a small pair of scissors. This self-incriminating statement convinced Detective Chief Inspector James Dodson that Mary was the actual killer, as only the police knew about the broken scissors found at the crime scene. In addition, the local boy she named was quickly questioned, and was discovered to have been in Newcastle International Airport on the afternoon of July 31st, with numerous witnesses able to corroborate his parents' claims. Mary Bell was visited at her home in the early hours of August 5th. On this occasion, she was notably defensive when confronted with the discrepancies of her previous statement. Informing detectives, "You're trying to brainwash me. I will get a solicitor to get me out of this." Brian Howe was buried in a local cemetery on August 7th, 1968, in a ceremony attended by over 200 people. According to DCI Dodson, who had planned to arrest both girls later that day, Mary Bell stood outside the Howe household as the child's coffin was brought from the home at the beginning of the funeral procession. Dodson later stated, "She stood there, laughing and rubbing her hands. I thought, my God, I've got to bring her in. She'll do another one." Both Mary and Norma were formally charged with the murder of Brian Howe at 8 p.m. that evening. In the presence of an independent witness, Mary prepared a written statement in which she had admitted to being present when Brian Howe was murdered, but insisting the murder had been committed by Norma. She also admitted she and Norma had broken into the Woodwind Crescent nursery the day after killing the killing of Martin Brown, defacing the property before the two had written the 4 handwritten notes. Shortly after the arrest, both girls underwent psychological evaluations. The results of these tests revealed Norma was intellectually delayed and a submissive character who easily displayed emotion, whereas Mary was bright yet cunning character, prone to sudden mood swings. Occasionally, Mary was willing to talk, although she rapidly became sullen, introspective, and defensive in nature. The 4 psychiatrists who examined Mary concluded that, although not suffering from a mental disorder, she suffers from a psychopathic personality disorder. In his official report compiled for the Director of Public Prosecutions, David Westbury concluded, "Mary's social techniques are primitive and take the form of automatic denial, manipulation, complaining, bullying, fight, or violence." The trial lasted 9 days. On December 17th, the jury retired to consider their verdict, and would deliberate for 3 hours and 25 minutes before reaching their verdicts. Mary Bell was cleared of murder, but convicted of the manslaughter of both boys on the grounds of diminished responsibility. Norma Bell was acquitted of all charges. Upon hearing the jury's verdicts, Norma clapped her hands in excitement, whereas Mary burst into tears as her mother and grandmother also wept. Passing sentence, Mr. Justice Cusack described Belle as a dangerous individual, adding she posed a very grave risk to other children, and that steps must be taken to protect the public from her. She was sentenced to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure, effectively an indefinite sentence of imprisonment. At the time of Belle's manslaughter convictions, she was aged 11 years and 6 months, making her Britain's youngest female killer, a statistic which remains to the present day. Mary was then sent to multiple remand homes throughout her teenage and young adult years. Mary would be released from prison at the age of 23 and had a daughter. Belle wanted a chance at a normal life and went into hiding. Her daughter did not know about Mary's past until 1988, when they were discovered by the media, causing Belle and her daughter to go into hiding again with undercover officers. Belle's current whereabouts are unknown and remain protected by the 2003 High Court order. According to Sereni, Belle does not claim she was wrongly convicted and freely admits the abuse she suffered as a child does not excuse her crimes. Well guys, thank you guys so much for watching/listening to this episode of Juby After Dark. If you enjoyed this content, please why don't you go ahead and give me the follow or like button depending on which platform you are on. And make sure you come back next month, where we do a new episode of Juby After Dark every month. If you feel that you would like to help support this channel and this content, please go ahead and check out the link to my Patreon below. For just $1 a month, you are able to simply help me out with this content and be able to keep making more content for you guys, possibly at a more rapid pace. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.